pleased to bring to the stage Professor and Dr. Michael Shanks to talk a bit about design thinking. Dr. Shanks, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It's great to be here. I think this is my third contribution to this series of EdCast events. I hope I'm going to really just remind you of some key components, potentials really, that you're exploring today, and that is the connection with something that Stanford has come to be associated with, and it gets called design thinking, human-centered design. I just want to put that in the mix for you here now, and I'll quickly run through some key points just in case you're not up there with me, and then I'm just going to open it up with some questions to you and see how you feel about the issues that I'm about to raise. I'm an archaeologist, I'm faculty here. We have a unit in the School of Engineering called the Center for Design Research, and within that we have another research group and more called Foresight and Innovation. Other stuff I do is to do with cities, city life, big pictures really on where we're at, where we've come from, where we're going to. And that's the archaeologist speaking, the anthropologist too, and to a certain extent a historian. I like to stand back from the issues that we're talking about here today. For example, the wonderful one that you're all talking about, what is it to be human? And I like to think that I can add a little bit of something to that debate since, it's what I do, looking at 200,000 years of humanity. Big pictures then on also things that really concern us today, change. We seem to be living in a world of runaway change, a runaway world, where we're so constantly concerned about innovation, about disruption, and we feel that we are somehow really quite special in this regard, and actually we're not. This has been happening over and over again throughout human history. And it's not just that we can learn from that. History does not repeat itself. But it certainly gives a context for the questions that are deeply, yes, concerning us, and deeply concerning us not least because what is happening again is kind of bigger now. Scale has gone up, implications have gone up. Anyway, so that's something where I've come from. Foresight and innovation, I'm going to tie a little bit to design thinking for us here now with just some quick little statements. A little bit more, though, context, how I apply some of this, just to give you some orientation. So for 10 years now, I've been working with Rotterdam City and Port, looking at the issues facing the city and its community. 187 languages, the biggest port certainly in Europe, the biggest oil port in the world. 20% of carbon emissions in Europe, Rotterdam, because of the oil refineries there. Other stuff, I'm very interested in urban futures and everything that implies for, again, the questions you're asking here today. Now, I got sucked into the world of automotive design too, not just because of cars. In fact, we think that, of course, the automobile world is changing. It's actually, of course, a lovely bigger issue of mobility in every sense, and how physical mobility now has merged, kind of always was merged, with mental mobility, our capacity to imagine, to go other places, and not just physically. And I do work in museums and dig up ancient sites, including a Roman town at the moment, some of the people I've worked with. So, how might we address questions about the future of work? Something that I think I'm preaching to the choir here. The big picture. If you want to understand change and innovation, it's always about people. We are overly concerned with technology. We think that the world is being driven by technological change. I would argue it isn't. And I would argue technology has never driven change in human history ever. And I'll challenge you to come up with an example that you think is about technological change, and I will attempt to show it's actually always primarily about people. And you've been sharing some of this already now as to how we get our heads around the human in facing the questions that concern us today. Culture, much really not well understood actually. Mindset though, oh yeah. Process, how things happen. And the dynamics of organizations and teams. You've been hearing that. That's good stuff. The way of design, including design thinking, and I'm not talking about product design, the way of design is a great way of tackling some of the questions you're raising, exploring today about the future of work. I'm going to give you a little example from a class of ours, a graduate class. It's studio-based learning. It's a three-term-based graduate class in the School of Engineering, and it's called ME310. It's studio-based because, and it is industry-sponsored. We have companies, organizations that issue the class with a challenge, and the class runs a design studio on that challenge for a year to see what they can come up with. This is a communication satellite, if you didn't know. The challenge from Lockheed Martin one year was to a bunch of graduates, can you make the production process cheaper? That was the challenge. Now, bear in mind, these are engineering students. They're not communication satellite experts at all. You might think, yeah, it's a tech problem. Key point, it's never primarily technology. Yes, technology may be involved, but it's never primarily technology. Human-centered design starts, indeed ends, with people. Let's put to one side quite what people and humans are, but we are human-centered. Where do you start? A typical piece of advice we give, start with users. Communication satellites. Okay, who are the users of communication satellites? I'll run you, I know at this point we could talk about how it all works and everything, but we want to keep things moving fast. So let me just run you through the story quickly. You might think it's, well, we are users of communication satellites. We use our mobile devices. We have all sorts of stuff running around the world. We have companies who manage communication satellites. We have manufacturing companies. We have design teams who build the things, manufacture them. One of the issues, of course, about communication satellites is they're up there. We are not really a direct user. We are indirect users of communication satellites. Who, we ask, actually has hands-on experience of communication satellites? Well, there's the production team, yep, the engineers. Then, of course, the satellite gets put on the top of a rocket and up it goes into orbit. And then, boy, very little direct experience of them. This is one of the reasons why they're so expensive. They have to work reliably when they go up into orbit because you can't mend them. You don't send astronauts up to mend communication satellites. So, who are the crucial users in dealing with satellites where you can make their life easier? Now, you might say, okay, engineers, they're the ones. But if you look carefully, if you do your research into the production process, the design and production process of communication satellites, there was a neglected user group who were nevertheless crucial to the making of satellites. They were the teams that tested the satellites before they were sent up into orbit. That is, they have to work. Quality assurance is crucial. It's a key, and it's extremely expensive because you have the satellite, you've got to test it. Anything that shows signs of not being super reliable, you replace it. They're big things. When you're putting your sensors on as a tester, you might then find that there's a chip up at the top that needs replacing. It looks faulty. It looks as if it might fail. You get the ladders out, or you take the side off, you get into these big pieces of machinery, you pull out the circuit, you take it down, you rework it, you put new components on, put it back in, put the test sensors on again. Oh, actually it was the circuit next to the one we've just fixed. It takes a lot of energy, effort to test these satellites, and it costs a fortune. The studios in our class said, how do we make the life of testers easier, more efficient? Back in the day, you perhaps will recall, when PCs were quite intimidating pieces of machinery, it was difficult sometimes to repair them. You could take them apart, put them back together again. Then they came up with a wonderful solution to fixing DIY your PC, hinging the side of the box. So you get easy access to the insides. You can pull out a graphics card, put a new one in, makes it easy. The grad teams said, hey, can you not make a satellite, engineer it so that the side panels hinge down to bench height, giving easy access to the inside of the machine, of the satellite, for easy testing and replacement. It would just solve so much of the trouble and anxiety of fixing these things. The engineers looked at it and said, no way. To hinge the side, they're big, to hinge the sides panels and bring them down, the hinges, we can't make them strong enough. The grad team said, we've got a calculation here that'll show, it'll save, if we can hinge the side panels down, it'll save this amount of time, it'll save this amount of money. Within a week, they found a hinge for the satellite. So that is a very, very simple story of how tech can be approached through understanding how people engage with the things around them, including big, expensive items of technology such as communication satellites. The users then aren't directly us. The main users whose lives can be improved through design were the testing team. And Lockheed Martin took it away, and sure enough, it saved them millions. I think it's nearly 20 million per unit in saving. That's human-centered design, focusing on people's needs and experiences. Yes, in relationship to technology. Putting people at the heart of things. Design thinking is a kind of shorthand for human-centered design, but what on earth is it? Stanford has come to stand with good reputation, with good reason, for developing what gets called human-centered design thinking. Design thinking, though, just to remind you, we're not talking about product, we're not talking about engineering, we're not talking about, he's not there anymore, Sir Johnny. We're not talking about designers. We're not talking about style. We're not talking about graphic design. We're actually talking about so much more, as I attempt to just show in that little story of a satellite. Design thinking is basically a way of managing projects. It's a pragmatics. It's not a method. It's not an algorithm. It's a bundle. And it's focused on researching people, finding out about them. Empathy is the word we often use. Framing challenges, that is, the satellite framed as an issue for testers. That's framing the challenge in a way that allows radical, effective innovation. Explore alternatives, experiment, try things out, hands-on understanding and innovation. And it's a massive field. It's got distinctive mindsets. One which we're very familiar with that kind of dominates today is an engineering mindset. He's in Europe, it's Bob the Builder. Dude, yeah. I don't know if you know Bob the Builder. Anyway, Bob the Builder is a kid's cartoon, and the little chant that they come up with is they're faced with design challenges. And Bob and his team always say, can we fix it? Yes, we can. It's a very positive mindset, yeah, but it's a little bit too focused on this. We're very, very familiar with this as a way of approaching the world. The world seen as a set of problems which we aim to solve using engineering of one sort or another. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the only way. And design thinking emphasizes much more the exploration, the investigation, the reframing, and getting on with it, reiterating, rather than analyzing a problem, engineering a solution, trying it out, giving it a go, experimenting, playing around, and such. This is, in many ways, a suggestion for putting something at the heart of our investigations, at the heart of our efforts to improve learning, complementing regular engineering mindsets, STEM, with a process such as this, pursued in, yes, design thinking. It's action-oriented. There are many toolkits out there. They're not fresh and new and only invented in the last 5 years. There's all sorts of long-standing techniques in this toolkit. Here's one that we promote in our unit. How to gain perspective, 3 tools. How to spot opportunities, develop solutions, build teams, generate vision. All the very familiar stuff. This is just one particular combination of tools that works. So I'm just throwing design thinking in here as a crucial component of what we're doing, what we're aiming to do, how we see the great challenges facing us. But I just want to summarize, again, putting my archaeological hat on. This is not new. A lot of the challenges we're facing here are not just of the moment. Yes, they're of the contemporary context, but they take us way back into human history. Design thinking is just the latest term for a certain, well, process-based project management and such. Design thinking, strategic foresight offer, yeah, as I say, strategic techniques for strategic action, indeed in a changing world. And then I just want to end with this before I throw it over to you. They focus on dynamic human ecologies, connections. We're not unfamiliar now with the notion of ecology, and that's good. Systems thinking goes with this. Networks, connections, embeddedness, entanglement are all very powerful ways of looking at the world today and are very appropriate to what we're trying to do. But rather than STEM, tech, and engineering, we need broader, and you'll have heard this, I'm sure, focus on embracing the kind of skills and techniques and mindsets and pragmatics offered by design thinking. And none of this is particularly new. The foresight, if you like, component of what I'm putting forward for you here now is one that suggests not that we are going to predict the future, but that we can prepare for what might come and what might not come. In fact, we've always done that as humans. Foresight, though, depends upon insight into where we are now and fundamentally hindsight. The issues facing urbanization, urban dwelling, urban life have a short 5,000-year history. And I can show you, if we were so inclined, how so much that we're facing in urban development is actually premised upon 5,000 years of changes, yes, but that were set in motion way back when in human history. And that is empowering for all sorts of reasons that we could, yes, go into. But look, that's just, as I say, a contribution to your thoughts today. I just wondered if you had any thoughts, comments, or questions, and I'm happy to field them in whatever way turns out to be appropriate. Let's see if we can come up perhaps with some, what's on your mind with respect to perhaps what I've just been saying, and with respect to the agenda you have in front of you today. How about Hossam? Yes. What's on your mind? In reaction, perhaps, to what I've said, or whatever today. Sure.
Taking those
Are you familiar or unfamiliar with design thinking?
I am familiar with design thinking.
Okay.
Actually, we use it ourselves.
Good. Can you give us an example of how you use design thinking?
We try to understand how we can help journalists around the world.
Understand?
How we can help journalists around the world.
Yes.
Solve the problems that the industry faces.
So, journalism.
Yes.
Okay, so we have reporting, communications, absolutely. Now we know, in terms of our EQ, in terms of soft skills, for goodness sake, for engineers, communication skills are absolutely fundamental. How do you use design thinking to establish, well, just a better world for journalists who are reporting and communicating to the world?
Well, we talked to a lot of people who journalists in developing economies. What we were trying to work out how.
Thank you.
Yep.
The challenges that they faced, and one of the primary challenges was access to reliable form of training and education, because there's massive variance between countries and even within countries. And the other was to a similar level again experience that would give them the opportunity to learn how to work in changing technology and consumer habits and so on.
So I've just scribbled down some things that absolutely bring out some of the, what can we say, advantages, some of the value of using a design thinking approach. You're spot on. Listening, researching. Design thinking is profoundly research-based. It's rooted in another one of my little hats that I wear, anthropology, ethnography. But you know, listening to people, taking people seriously, watching them, and having ways of assimilating, of taking on board, of understanding what you're seeing and what you're hearing. And of course, that is entirely susceptible, if you should so wish, to big data analysis, machine learning, or whatever. Because all that big data analysis, machine learning, and what we typically call AI, it's actually mostly machine learning, what this really offers is something we've been doing since we became human and before, which is seeking pattern in a world of complexity. The world has always come at us as enormous amounts of information. It always has. We go through life with this great flow of experience in which we are immersed. It includes us, of course, but also we know there are worlds beyond, some of which we have little familiarity with and engagement with. Sometimes there's enormous implication, and we know that. The challenge has always been finding pattern in that complexity. That is the toolkit that we're being presented with in terms of machine learning, big data analysis. It is pattern finding. But it's really based on, again, awareness and sensitivity, mindfulness of the world around us. Absolutely. Another deep component of human experience. Can anybody, we hear a lot about this, experience design. Experiential learning is something that we like to think we specialize in the engineering school, the D school at Stanford and beyond.
Please, a massive round of applause for the thoughtfulness and contribution. Dr. Shanks.